What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another midnight beta video. Hope you're all doing very well. We're going to talk about Resto Druid, and we're going to keep diving into all the different healers. I will keep covering them for you guys, and I'll get to the DPS soon, don't worry, but I want to make sure I do a good healer kind of roundup here. So Resto Druid, for those of you guys who have been following me for a while, you know this is probably like my second least played healer, just because it's just not, I'm not a proactive healing person. I don't like Resto Druid. I don't really like Disc Priest. However, in Season 3 of The War Within, I fell in love with this Keeper of the Grove build, and it's so much fun, so cool, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that now, but I'm going to talk about, you know, holistically what's going on with Resto Druid. In the class tree, of course, we're getting Gift of the Wild, which is really huge. So your Mark of the Wild is twice as effective. You're getting 6% versatility. That should say 6%. There we go, 6% there. And then the new Heart of the Wild is really, really good. This used to like empower your off roll. Now it just does an ability from your off roll. So if I'm a Resto Druid and I go into kitty form, let's say I go cat form because I'm playing like Wildstalker or whatever, right? You can go cat form and then press basically a Feral Frenzy, which does a crazy amount of damage and a bleed. If you're Moonkin, you get this AoE star thing. So there's like it's just a one-time ability that gets pressed now on a 2-minute cooldown, not a 5-minute cooldown. So that's very, very cool. I kind of like the change they made there. Okay. I was playing Wildstalker, which is why I have all these talents over here. But really, I would be doing something like this. So the changes to Resto Druid have actually been some of the best that any of the healers have seen. And what I'm talking about is the pruning or the melding of abilities together, right? Pushing abilities all into the same button so that we're not having 16 extra keybinds. So for example, Efflorescence just gets put down by your Lifebloom now. If I press Lifebloom, it puts an Efflow down, and then if I move, the Efflow comes with me in a second here. Once it heals, it keeps moving and doing that. So that's very, very cool. Grove Guardians are passive from your Swiftmen or your Wild Growth, which again is very, very cool. These are some consolidations that are pretty fantastic. Other healers kind of had some really bad consolidations in my opinion, but especially when it comes to like cooldowns, we look at like Resto Shaman, for example. They have to choose between Ascendance and Healing Tide Totem now, right? Which everybody's kind of mad about. Makes sense. Resto Druid doesn't have that problem. You have your mini cooldowns like Swiftmen, Nature's Swiftness. You have Ironbark still. Then you have Tranquility. And you either have Convoke or Tree of Life, which is how it was before. But you can take Convoke and still get the Tree of Life proc from Reforestation. So like, you literally have all the same cooldowns. Nothing really got pruned for Resto Druid, which is probably why it's sitting at like the top of everybody's mind right now. I'm going to give you a very, very, very early, totally not going to be correct in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Like there's lots of tuning yet to come tier list. Okay. Right now, this is kind of what I would be looking at in terms of healers. I think Resto Druid is maybe right at the very top or tied for the top with Mistweaver. Mistweaver is unbelievably fantastic. Holy Paladin, even though it's been kind of a weird spot, I think it's actually pretty cool. Resto Shaman is in a tough spot, I would say, and Presevoker as well. They probably lost the most out of all the healers. Like Presevoker lost Spirit Bloom. They lost Emerald Communion, or whatever the Communion one was. They lost like some serious spells, whereas Resto Druid didn't actually lose anything. They just had a bunch of extra buttons that you usually had to press consolidated into other abilities now, and they've gone passive, namely Grove Guardians and Efflow, which is really, really cool. I know some people are a little bit miffed about not being able to cast Grove Guardians again. I get it. It was kind of like putting a totem down, right? But you don't get to do it anymore. So that's pretty cool. Power of the Arc Druid, which is a talent that basically nobody ever took. I did always take it because it was really fun, but it was often not taken in the War Within. It is now passive with Soul of the Forest, and it's obviously been moved up to the middle here. So this is kind of like part of your normal rotation now, and really the entire kit is all about Swiftmen. It is all about Swiftmen. And what's really cool is the Keeper of the Grove Tree actually synergizes with Swiftmen really, really well, because it increases the healing of it right here, of course, and then your periodic heals have a chance to cause your next Swiftmen to summon a Dryad. So we're getting the tier set bonus coming through for Keeper of the Grove. You're going to get the Dryad. Your Swiftmen cools down faster, which is really good, because if you press Swiftmen, you get Soul of the Forest. If you get Soul of the Forest, your next Rejuve or Regrowth will apply to 2 additional targets, which is awesome. Soul of the Forest is just like a massive... it's a really important passive now that ties in to lots of different things, which is really good. Okay. Then we have this really cool new Ironbark talent. Ironbark summons a Dryad to channel a beam of pure energy onto your target. So if we cast it here, there's the Dryad right there channeling into me, and it does an enormous amount of healing. It's a lot of healing. 126,000 healing is an enormous amount, okay? So that's really, really cool. And then if we look at Wildstalker, because that's basically everything for Keeper of the Grove. If we look at Wildstalker, they're getting the symbiotic blooms proccing more often, the exploding symbiotic blooms into AoE healing, which is what was happening with the tier set bonus, right? And then, yeah, there's a chance for the blooms to just trigger a bursting growth every 2 seconds, which is really, really cool. So everything else for Wildstalker is basically the same. You would play it virtually the exact same, but you're getting the free proccing blooms that are now exploding on their own because of rampancy. Okay? The one thing that we did lose, which I was very sad about from the War Within, is Dream State. It used to be underneath Tranquility, and it used to give you 20 seconds of cooldown reduction on all of your other abilities. So things like Ironbark, Swiftmend, Nature Swiftness, and Convoke, most importantly. So the build that I was running in the War Within, where you like press Convoke and then you tranked and you basically had your Convoke back again and you could do it again, that's kind of dead in that sense. Also, Convoke used to summon the Dryad from our tier set bonus, and so did Tree of Life. And again, they've now just made it like a random passive proccing thing, which I'm not super crazy about, but it still actually works quite well. So you don't have Dream State, but instead Tranquility now has Flourish. Once again, another button that we used to press that is now baked into our Tranquility. So this is interesting. It ends up giving you at least 6 seconds of increased hots on everybody. So obviously in a raid, for example, you can like ramp with a bunch of rejuves and then like a wild growth, and then you're going to trank, and the trank is going to do its own healing. It does not have a heal over time anymore. They got rid of that. So trank does its own healing and extends all your extra hots. So that's kind of, you're not like tranking into a flourish, because you used to be able to do that, right? So not quite like that anymore. Right, so Resto Druid, again, it has a lot of the similar talents that it used to have. You've got things like called the Heirloom Druid with Dream of Cenarius, which is really good with Keeper of the Grove because of Blooming Infusion, which I've talked about in a previous video. You still have Rampant Growth, giving you the extra regrowth on allies with your Lifebloom. When it comes to your Apex talent, it's all about Lifebloom, which is super cool. Lifebloom now stacks. You can see it's stacking here. There's going to be a 1 here in a second, or a 2, sorry. There's a 2, and then it's going to go to 3. There's our 3 right there. So now it's got 3 stacks. If I refresh it on myself, it maintains the 3 stacks. This is really important. It maintains it. If I alternate my Lifebloom onto a new target, it will lose the 3 stacks. It'll have to build them back up again. So that's pretty cool. 30% of Lifebloom's healing splashes onto 2 nearby allies. Very cool. Lifebloom bursts into a blooming frenzy when you consume Soul of the Forest. Remember I said how important Soul of the Forest is, and therefore how important Swiftmend is? When you consume Soul of the Forest, causing it to bloom 5 times. So if I put it on myself, and then I'll put another hot on me, then I'll press Swiftmend, that gives me Soul of the Forest, then I'm going to press Rejuve, and my Lifebloom's going to trigger. Boom, 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 boom. Did you hear that? So that's kind of what this does. And again, all the healing from Lifebloom is going to splash to 30% of it's going to splash to 2 allies. So you're basically just really incentivized, really forced to maintain your Lifebloom. And if ideally you want to maintain it on 1 target if possible. That is the most ideal situation, so that you can keep the Lifebloom at 3 stacks at all times. Okay. We still have photosynthesis down here, but it does the same thing as before. Your periodic heals on targets with Lifebloom has an 8% chance to cause it to bloom. So it does the same thing, which is very cool. It doesn't really interact with this at all. But yeah, the entire kit for Resto Druid is actually looking very strong, and I had a really good time with it. I did try to play both Keeper of the Grove and Wildstalker, and I thoroughly despised my Wildstalker time. I just feel like, again, there's nothing wrong with it. I think Wildstalker will probably be the meta because it's very, very good. But some of the stuff they've added to Keeper of the Grove, particularly this Spirit of the Thicket talent where this Dryad channels onto somebody, it's like it turns your Ironbark into an incredible external cooldown now. I mean, it was fine before. Giving somebody 20% DR, very, very good. But then adding a heal on top of it is kind of enormous in my opinion, and really takes Keeper of the Grove to the next level in terms of this this kind of triaging responsive hero tree, in my opinion, because um it gives you a ton of extra damage, so you can do lots of healing for Dream of Cenarius, which is amazing. And then you have this ability to spawn a Dryad, which is going to trank your whole team at a 10% effectiveness and then regrowth somebody, which is really good. And then you have another Dryad that is going to do this channeled heal, which is going to be really good for triaging somebody. And whenever your Dryads are spawning, they will cool down Swiftmen by 25%, which is now a major triage button. Obviously, it was a triage button before, but it's like it heals for so much more than it did now. So, lots of really good responsive triage buttons, I would say now, and passives. And again, the pruning or consolidation that hit other healers in a really difficult way has really not even touched Resto Druid, which is why I think it's one of the strongest healers on the beta right now. Again, we're like 8 weeks away from even the pre-patch, so just please don't freak out yet or anything if you're playing a different healer. But yeah, having Flourish tied to Tranquility is pretty great. Having Efflow tied to Lifebloom is really great. Having Grove Guardians tied to Swiftmen or Wild Growth is really great. Those are 3 buttons that you don't have anymore. So your rotation just looks a lot smoother, a lot easier. I think you can actually spend more time doing damage now, which is pretty cool, because you've regained 3 globals in terms of your rotation, which means you can get all your hots going quicker and then get into kitty form, get into boomkin form, and do a bunch of damage if you want to. Okay, there's a couple of other interesting talents that are here now. Like there's some Swiftmen stuff, but this regrowth one is actually pretty cool. If you're regrowthing somebody, when it crits, it's 300% more effective. And remember, if you're regrowthing somebody that already has regrowth on them, it has a 40% increased crit chance. So that's disgusting. One of your best triage buttons, regrowth, gonna hit even harder. So that's really good there. There's all the rejuve talents down here. That hasn't changed at all. And then, yeah, the rest of it is basically the same. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think Resto Druid right now is the strongest healer on the beta, for sure. Again, we have like 8 weeks, maybe 9 weeks before this even matters. But if you're interested in Resto Druid at all, it plays very similar to how it did before. There isn't a lot of gameplay changes, but it is strong. The consolidation of the talents is strong. They have kept all of their major cooldowns. There's a lot of really great things going on here. So yeah, Resto Druid looking pretty solid. Let me know what you guys think in those comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. I love y'all. I'll see you in the next one.